Okay, can you please tell me about yourself?
Yeah, hi. So currently I'm working as a Java based backend developer and I have around 2.6 years of experience in backend application development. And my primary technical skills include like Java 8, Java 11 also, and Spring Boot, microservices, SQL. And I also have worked on REST APIs, exception handling, collections, multi-threading, and JPA, Hibernate, and database related things. So in my current and previous project, I have been mainly involved in developing and maintaining the backend services. So mostly I have been working on the business logic implementation, API integration, and database operations. And also I used to handle the bug fixing and enhancements of the task. And I have also worked on microservices based architecture where I have mostly worked on the responsibilities for the creating and modifying services and handling API request response. And also I ensure the proper communication between the different modules. And on the database side, I have hands-on experience on the SQL queries, joins, store data handling, and debugging data related issues. So along with development, I have also been involved in the code analysis, issue fixing, deployment support, and understanding the production issues. So yeah, so this is what is all about myself and about my activity.
What is the project currently you are working on? Can you explain about it?
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm working on a banking domain project. So that is mainly focused on digital transactions processing and account related backend services. So the project is designed to support core banking related operations such as customer account validation, transaction processing, beneficiary handling, and payment related service integrations. So it is a backend application built on mostly Java, Spring Boot, and microservices. And my role in the project is mainly backend development side. So I work on developing the and enhancing the REST APIs and implementing business logic and database operations. And also I fix the database like any kind of defects and support the any kind of enhancements. And I have also worked on the transaction related modules, so where proper validation, request processing, and response handling are very important because banking applications require accuracy, security, and reliability. So apart from the development, I also work on the issue analysis and debugging and support related activities. So especially whenever there are any API or data related issue in the application flow, then I work on them. So yeah, so overall the project has is mostly we are working on the real-time backend development in the banking environment. So especially mostly we are working on the Spring Boot and microservice-based architecture.
Okay, so for security, what are you doing in your project and where are you applying security in your project?
Yeah, so at our level, most of security is mainly applied on the API layer, authentication flow, authorization checks, and request validation, and also while data handling. So these are the places where we are applying the security thing. So in the project, security is mainly implemented in the areas like authentication, authorization. We are doing we secure APIs so that only authenticated users or valid systems can access them. So for example, all APIs are protected and unauthorized users should not be able to access the sensitive endpoints. So we have given the access of the specific endpoints to the specific users only. Not all the users are allowed to access all the URLs. Okay. And so that is basically role based access. So certain operations are restricted based on the user roles and permission. So, so some operations are admin level, so where admin can only access the few things, but not general user can do that. And also we have a request validation, so we validate incoming request data properly before processing it. So that basically helps in preventing the invalid input and avoid unwanted or unsafe data from the entering the system. And also it protects the business logic flow. So yeah, these are the authentications and authorization we are doing. And also at the database level, we are using proper query handling thing, and we are always try to avoid the unsafe direct query constructions. So we are also handling that, and we are handling sensitive data carefully. And some general precaution also we do in very advanced. For example, we try to avoid the exposing internal system details directly in API responses. This is important very much because like extract traces or internal errors should not be visible to end user. So we try not to share that to user, and only controlled error messages should be returned. So that also we are following. That is the coding style we are following. And also the communication between the microservices also we are making sure it should be secured. So yeah, so overall in our project, security is mainly we are applying at logging, authentication flow, and protected APIs we are doing, and transaction related operations wherever it is, we are trying to apply, and user access control we are doing, and also at the data interaction layer we are trying to handle it. So yeah, so these are the places we are trying to apply authentication and authorization.
Okay, by the way, what is the difference between authentication and authorization?
Yeah, authentication basically means like who are you? So whenever any system anybody is trying to log in, so they have to give the username, password, or OTP verification or fingerprint, any kind of verification they need to give. So that basically authenticates the user. Okay, so user is first time they are able to log in, and authorization means what you are allowed to. Are you have to log in now? What URLs you are allowed to access? So you are not, so every user is not allowed to access every URL, right? So that is what is that controlled access to the user is called authorization. Yeah, so that's the difference between these two.
Okay, so any tool you are using in this project for this authentication and authorization?
In our project, we are mainly using Spring Security for handling authentication and authorization. For authentication, secured requests are validated before allowing access to protected APIs. So for authorization, access is controlled based on the user role permission level. So only authorized users can access the specific endpoints or perform the certain operations.
Okay, that's fine. But are you using JWT also?
Yeah. So yes, the token-based security is used in the project. So JWT-based authentication flow is something we are aware of in the secured API handling. So in such a flow, user gets authenticated, a token is generated after that, and that token is passed with API request, and then the backend validates the token before allowing the access. So that is the whole I mean steps for the validation of this based on user validation based on the JWT. So this helps in securing the APIs in a stateless way. Yeah, we are using JWT.
Okay, and what are the parts of this JWT? Can you explain?
JWT token is basically having three parts. So the first one is header, then it is payload, and then signature. So header, like header will have the metadata about the token. So usually it contains like type and algorithm. So for example, like HS256 and all. So that we can find there, and then we have payload. So it payload basically data and claims will be there. So for example, any user is there, so user name, its role, its expiry time and all will be there in the payload. And in the signature is used to verify like the token itself, whether it is tempered or modified, that should not have happened. So that is the use of signature. So yeah, so these are the three parts of the token.
Okay, so suppose if a child class overrides a method but still wants the parent logic, okay, so how will you handle this situation?
Yeah, so if a child class overrides a method but still wants to use a logic of the parent class, then we can handle that by using the super keyword. So inside the overridden method in the child class, we can call the parent class version of that method using the super dot method name. Okay, so this is useful when we want to extend or enhance the parent behavior instead of replacing it completely. So yeah, so for example, we may want to execute the original logic from the parent first and then add some extra child specific logic after that. So in that case we can so yeah, we can use super dot that method name
Okay, and can we call parent method without using the super?
without using super. So normally if the child class has overridden the method, then calling the method directly will invoke the child class version, not the parent one. So if we especially want to call parent class implementations, then we should use super. So I think without super we cannot directly access the overridden parent. We cannot do that.
And how about, can we use super inside a static method?
No, super is generally used in the context of instance level inheritance. So especially for accessing the parent class constructor method or variables. So static method basically belongs to the class. So that is not to the object. So method overriding behavior does not apply in the same way. Yeah, we cannot cite the static method.
Okay, now suppose if the method is declared as final in the parent class, then what will happen if the child class tries to override the method?
Yeah, if a method is declared as final in the parent class, then the child class cannot override that method. So the reason is that the final keyword is used to prevent modification of the original method implementation. So it means the parent class wants that method behavior to remain fixed and unchanged in all child classes. So if a child class tries to override in a final method, then it will result a compile type. So it simply like terms as a final method cannot be inherited and used, but it cannot be redefined in the subclass.
Okay, so suppose you are designing a library class and a book class in Java, then would you use inheritance or composition to model their relationship?
And why? I think in this case we can use composition, not inheritance. So, for example, if we take library and book, then a library has a book, but library is not a book. Okay, so this is a has a relationship. And composition is basically correct way to model it in the object oriented programming. So in composition one, class contains another class as part of its structure. So the library class can contain one or more book objects. So inheritance should only be used when there is a proper user relation. For example, if we have an employee and manager, and then like manager is an employee, so inheritance would make more sense there. But here in this case, we have library and book. So library has a book, so it will be composition. Yeah.
Okay, so what is method overriding?
Yeah, method overriding happens when a subclass defines a method with the same name and same return type and same parameter. So that is as a method, so already present in the parent class. So that is what is the method overriding, and the purpose of the method overriding is to allow the child class to provide its own specific implementation of that. So that is what is the method override. So suppose we have a class animal, and it has, let's say, method called sound, and some random implementation is there of that sound method in this animal class. And suppose we have another class called dog, and that extends animal. Okay, and then suppose if we are overriding that sound method, then here we can override that sound method, and basically we can write some different implementation. So that's what is the override.
Okay, so this method overriding happens at compile time or runtime?
Yeah, overriding happens at runtime.
Okay, so suppose any method is there and that method is final. So can we override that method?
Final, no. So final method we cannot override. So the purpose of final keyword is to prevent the child class from changing the method implementation. So yeah, we cannot.
Okay, and can we increase or decrease the access modifier while overriding?
Uh, Actually, we can increase the access modifier, its visibility, and but we cannot decrease it. While overriding a method in Java, we are allowed to increase the visibility of the method, but we are not allowed to reduce it. So suppose if we have, it is currently having the protected method. Okay, so that further can be done to the public, means we can increase the visibility, and from protected to public when we are doing, then public is more visible, right? So that is allowed. But suppose earlier it was public and we are trying to make it protected private, Okay, so that is kind of reducing the visibility of it. So that is not allowed,
And why so?
because overriding is basically is based on the, I think, idea that the child class method should be a proper substitute of the parent class method. So if the parent method is accessible in a certain way, then the child class should not make it less accessible. Okay, otherwise it may break the polymorphism and other expected way. So yeah, so that's the reason.
Okay, so why do we make variables private in the classes? Why not public?
Yeah, we generally make variables private in a class to follow the concept of encapsulation. So the main idea is that the internal data of the class should not be directly accessible from outside, because that can make the object unsafe and difficult to control. So if variables are public, then anyone can directly change their values, even in a invalid way also. So for example, if we have an age field and it is a public, then someone could directly set it to -5. So that is not a valid variable, right? That is not a valid value. So and that does not make sense also. But if we keep the variable private and provide the access through the getter and setter method, then we can control like how the like value is read or updated. So in the setter we can also add validation or business rule, like the user cannot give the negative or something like that. So overall, like keeping the private helps in protecting the data and maintaining the control and making the code more secure and maintained.
Okay, by the way, what is this encapsulation exactly?
Yeah, encapsulation is a concept of wrapping the data and related methods together in a single unit. So that's the definition of encapsulation. So in Java, we usually achieve encapsulation by making the variables as private and exposing them through the public getters and setters. So that's the way how we expose the any variable. So yeah, so that's the meaning of encapsulation.
And can a class be encapsulated without setters?
Without setters yet, it yes, it can still be encapsulated. So encapsulation does not mean that the setters are always required. It simply means that the internal data should be hidden and controlled. So that's the meaning. So in some cases we may only provide the getter methods. If we want the object to be only read only, then we can give only getters. So only the idea is that we want the control data whatever to the that variable.
Okay, so have you used lombok at the rate of data?
Lombok, yes, I have used.
So if we use lombok at the rate of data, then am I still following encapsulation?
Yes, if you're using that also, then generally yes, because even though Lombok generates getters and setters automatically, the fields are still usually kept private. So encapsulation is still maintained as long as access is controlled properly. But we should still be carefully not to expose everything unnecessarily. So yeah.
Okay, so how can you make the class immutable?
Yeah, to make the class immutable, the main idea is that the once an object is created, its state should not change. So for that, we usually make the class final so that no other class can extend it or modify its behavior. Then after that, we keep all the fields private and final, so they can only be assigned once. And all values should be after that initialized through the constructor, and we should not provide like setter method, because setter method would allow the object state to change after, so we do not allow the setter. And also if the class contains any mutable objects like list, date or custom object, then we should not expose them directly. So instead, we should return a defensive copy or an unmodifiable. So that external code cannot modify the internal state indirectly. So overall, an immutable class is designed in such a way that once it is created, its data remains fixed and cannot be changed.
Okay, what is the difference between double equal to and dot equals in Java?
Yeah, in Java, double equal to and dot equals are used for comparison, but they work differently. So the double equal to operator checks whether two references are pointing to the same object, whereas dot equals is used to compare the actual content or the value of the. So for primitive data types, double equal to compares the values directly, but for the objects it compares the reference values unless the dot equals. For example, in string, dot equals checks whether the text is the same. So in short, like double equal to mainly for the reference comparison, while dot equals is for the logical value. Yeah.
Okay, and what is the difference between hash set and tree set?
Hash set and tree set, yeah, both hash set and tree set are used to store the unique elements, but the difference is in how they store and organize the data. So hash set basically stores elements using the hash table, so it does not maintain the insertion or sorted order. Okay, but it gives better performance for add, remove, and search. And tree set, on the other hand, stores the elements in a sorted order using a tree structure. So usually that is based on the natural ordering or a comparison. So yeah, so that's the difference between. So if we need uniqueness with sorting, then we use tree set. Otherwise, for faster general use, we use has.
Okay, and what is the difference between checked and unchecked exception?
Yeah, so exceptions are mainly divided into these two, like checked and unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions are those that are checked at compile time, and the compiler basically forces us to handle them using the try catch or throws. So like for example, we have input output exception and SQL. So that is what, and unchecked exceptions are checked at runtime and are usually caused by the programming mistakes. So for example, we have null pointer exception, arithmetic exception, or array out of bound exception. So yeah, so these are the unchecked exceptions. So in simple terms, like checked exceptions are expected situations that must be handled, while unchecked exceptions are mostly coding related runtime.
And what is the difference between throw and throws?
Yeah, throw and throws are both related to exception handling, but they are used differently. So throw is used to actually throw an exception object inside the method body. On the other hand, throws is used in the method signature to declare that the method may throw certain exception. So throw is for raising an exception, while throws is for the declaring possible.
And what is the difference between string builder and string buffer?
Yeah, so all these are used to work with text in Java, but they behave differently. So string is immutable. So that means that once it is created, it cannot be changed. So if we modify it, then it creates a new object. Okay, and a string builder is mutable and is used when we need to modify string frequently uh, in a single thread environment. Okay, so it is mutable, and string buffer is also mutable, but it is synchronized. Okay, so it is a thread safe but slower than the string builder. Okay, so string buffer and a string builder both are mutable, and string is immutable. So and again, this string buffer, and between the string buffer and string builder, so string buffer is synchronized and string builder is not.
And what is functional interface in Java?
Yeah, a functional interface in like is an interface that contains only one abstract method. So like it was basically introduced mainly to support the Lambda expression. So we have runnable, callable, comparator. So all these are the functional interface. Okay. So even if the interfaces has like default or static methods, it is still considered as functional interface as long as there is only one abstract. So and we can also use, we have the annotation called add of functional interface. So that we can use on top of the that interface to clarify like any kind of compile time checking, like that basically makes sure that the that a specific interface is a functional interface. If anything we are doing adding there beyond which is which just which does not justify that it is a functional interface, it will start showing the compilation error.
Okay, so what is the difference between find first and find any?
Yeah, both find first and find any are used in Stream API to get an element from the stream, but there is a small difference. So Find first always tries to return the first element according to the stream order, while find any can return any matching element. So especially in the parallel streams, so where order may not matter. So in sequential stream, both often behave similarly, but in parallel processing, like find any may be more performant because it is not strictly care about the order.
Okay, and in Java 11, what are the new features which were introduced?
In Java 11, the features like HTTP client API, so which provides the modern way of making HTTP request. So that was one. And again, in the string utility method, also introduced a few more methods like is blank, lines, strip, and a few more methods are there. So that were introduced in the string. And the ability to run the Java files directly without explicit compilation in a simple cases. So basically, this Java 11 was introduced as a long-term support version. So yeah, so these were the like features I can recall, which were
And how about Java 21? Do you know what is virtual threads in Java 21?
virtual threads. Yeah, so virtual threads are a lightweight implementation of threads introduced to simplify concurrent programming in Java. So traditional threads are expensive in terms of system resources, but virtual threads are much lighter and allow us to create a very large number of concurrent tasks that can be done more efficiently. So they are specifically useful in applications that handle the many blocking operations like database calls, API calls, or input output tasks. So in a simple terms, virtual threads help improve scalability while keeping the programming model simple. So yeah, so that's the like virtual thread in the Java 21.
Okay, and what is fail fast and fail safe in collections?
Yeah, fail fast and fail safe are behaviors related to the iterating over collections. So a fail fast iterator throws a concurrent modification exception if the collection is modified while iterating. So except through the iterator's own method. So this is common in the collections like array list and hash map. So a fail fast iterator on the other hand works on a copy or snapshot of the collection. So it does not throw that exception even if the original collection is modified. Okay, and copy on write array list is a like common example for that. So fail fast detects modification quickly, while fail safe is more tolerant but may use the extra memory. So because it has to create the copy of it, right? Yeah, so that's the difference between these.
Okay, so in Spring Boot, can you tell me what happens internally when you run a Spring Boot application?
Yeah, so when we run a Spring Boot application, then the execution starts from the main method. So like we have a Spring Boot application dot run, right? So from there the application starts, and after that Spring Boot begins initializing the application and creates the application context. So that is basically the container responsible for managing all Spring Beans. Then it starts a component scanning to find the classes annotated with the things like, for example, we have various annotations like add item component, so add service, add bean, add repository, add controller. So all these are scanned and it registers them as a bean. And after that, Spring Boot applies auto configuration based on the dependencies present in the project. So for example, if Spring Boot starter web is there, then it automatically configures the web related things and all. Similarly, if a Spring Boot starter test or security or those things are there, so the related configuration is automatically set up. Then it performs the dependency injection and wires the required bin together. And if it is a web application, then Spring Boot also starts the embedded server like Tomcat. Okay, so overall, when a Spring Boot application starts, then it basically scans the project, creates and manages the bin, and then applies the configuration automatically, and then injects the beans, all the dependencies, and finally it brings the application up and ready to the server request. So yeah, so this is what is the all happens behind the scenes.
And what is the difference between Bean Factory and application context?
Yeah, both bean factory and application context are used to manage Spring Beans, but application context is more advanced and commonly used in Spring Boot. So this bean factory basically provides the basic dependency injection support, and Spring this application context basically provides the additional features. So it has additional features like event handling, and then internationalization, annotation support. So all these things, additional things are there in that. So mostly we use this application context. So yeah, so basically this application context is more powerful and enterprise ready version. And bean factory is like when we need the minimal things, then we can go for the bean factory.
Okay, so suppose you try to start your application and it is just starting very slowly. Okay, so how will you find what is slowing in the startup?
Like if my application is starting very slowly, then the first thing I would do is to check the startup logs carefully, because logs usually give the good idea of which phase is taking more time during the application indexes. And apart from that, I would also run the application in the debug mode, so that the Spring Boot can show more detailed information, especially around the auto configuration and bean loading. And after that, we can try to identify whether any specific bean initialization is taking too long, or if there is any heavy logic running behind the scene before a startup. So all those things we check, and we can also check whether the delay is coming from the database connection setup, or too much component scanning is happening, or unnecessary auto configuration is being loaded while a startup. So we don't have to may not have to load everything at the startup. So yeah, so these are the things we will do in that.
Okay, and if too many beans are getting created, then what will you do?
If too many beans are getting created, and because of that it is slowing down, then we can first check whether all of them are really required at the startup. And sometimes unnecessary configurations, like broad scanning or loading the extra modules, so those can like create too many beans. And in such cases, I think we can reduce the beans load by removing the unused dependencies, and we can limit the scanning, or we can use the lazy loading wherever I mean we can do. So yeah, these steps we can take in that case.
Okay, can we use add component annotation instead of add repository?
Technically yes, we can do that, because the repository itself is a specialized form of add component. So Spring will still detect that class during the component scanning and create it as a bean. But in practice, we usually use add data repository for DO or database related classes, because this repository gives a better semantic meaning, and also provides one important specific benefit, like exception translation. So if any database related exception occurs, then Spring can convert that low level persistent exception into more meaningful Spring data access exception. So yeah, we can use that, but mostly we should go for the add repository only.
So what do you mean by this exception translation?
Yeah, so exception translation basically means that Spring converts low level database or persistence exception into Spring's more consistent exception hierarchy. Mainly under we have data access exception. So that helps us to avoid dealing directly with the vendor specific exception, and makes exception handling cleaner and more uniform across the application. So that's the meaning of it.
Okay, so how does Spring decide which configuration it should apply?
Yeah, Spring decides which configuration to apply mainly by using the conditional annotations internally. So during a startup, it checks the application environment and tries to understand what is actually needed. So for example, it looks at the dependencies available in the class path and whether certain beans are already present and what values are defined in the application properties or YAML file. So based on these conditions, Spring Boot decides whether a particular configuration should be loaded or skipped. So like we have like common examples and conditions, like we have conditional on class, conditional on bean, and then conditional on missing bean. So these are there. So in simple terms, like Spring does not apply everything blindly, but it checks the project setup and only loads the configuration that match the current application context. Yeah.
So suppose any specific configuration of a bean we don't want. So we don't want Spring to configure any specific bean. So how would you stop it? Is there any way?
Yeah, we can stop it by excluding the related auto configuration. So the common way is like we can use exclude option inside the at the top Spring Boot application. So there we can tell Spring Boot not to load the particular auto configuration class. So in some cases we can also disable it through the like application.properties or YAML file. So yeah, so these are the two ways I think we can disable it.
Okay, so what if Spring creates a bean but I want to use my own bean instead of that? So what we can do?
Yeah, so in that case, instead of fully disabling everything, we can provide our own bean definition. So in my scenarios, like Spring Boot backs off automatically if the user defined bean of a same type is already present. So if I want a custom behavior, then we can define my own bean and let Spring use that instead of that. So yeah.
Okay, what is the difference between save and flush?
Yeah, save is used to like save it saves the entity in the persistent context, so it may not hit the DB immediately. So that's the save, and save and flush basically it saves the entity and flushes immediately. So that's the difference, and basically it forces a SQL execution to DB instantly. So if we have to instantly save and flush, then we can use save and flush, and uh, like whenever we are using save, then it happens at the persistent context, but it may not happen immediately.
So in microservices, can you tell me what is the difference between monolithic and microservices?
Yeah, monolithic architecture, the entire application is built and deployed as a single unit. So all modules are tightly connected in case of monolithic. And in microservices, the application is split into the multiple independent services, and each service handles the specific responsibility. Like there will be like one under one big project, there will be multiple modules, and each modules are assigned to the different team members. I mean, it can be assigned to, and that is why the usually development is faster in case of microservices. And in monolithic, even a small change may require the deploying the full application, whereas in microservices only the affected service can be deployed because we are doing developing that in independently. So yeah, so and the microservices offer better scalability and flexibility, but they also bring like more complexity in case of communication, deployment, and monitoring. So these things are there, but yeah, that is the main difference between these two.
Okay, and what is service discovery?
Yeah, in microservices, like each service may run on a different port or server, and their locations can change dynamically. So service discovery basically helps services to find and communicate with each other without hard coding URLs. And instead of storing service locations manually, service registers themselves with a discovery server, and other services can look them up whenever needed. Yeah, so that basically makes the communication more flexible and manageable in the system. So yeah, so that's what is the service discovery.
Okay, and do you know Fin client?
Yeah, I know that. So Fin client is a declarative HTTP client. So that is used in Spring Cloud for the service to service communication. So instead of writing full REST call logic manually using the REST template or web client, we can define an interface and annotate it, and Spring handles the API call internet. So that basically makes the inter-service communication cleaner and easier to maintain. So that's what is the Fin client.
Okay, and what is load balancing in microservices?
Yeah, load balancing means basically the distributing incoming request across the multiple instances of the same service. So whenever the load is more at the same time, many users are trying to access some specific module, then we balance the whole load. So this helps to improve the performance, availability, and fault tolerance. And if one service instance is overloaded or down, then the traffic can be routed to another available instance. So in microservices, load balancing is uh, the same thing. So in microservices, are often scaled horizontally, and multiple running instances are done. So yeah.
Okay, and what is resilience 4J? Do you know?
Resilience for JPA, so that is the fault tolerant library commonly used in Spring Boot microservices. So it provides the features like circuit breaker, retry, rate limiter, and all. So it helps basically, it helps us to make services to services communication more reliable and stable, and especially when external or downstream services are failing or are responding slowly, then we can use this. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me, can two microservices share the same database?
Uh, Actually, technically it is possible, but usually it is not recommended in a proper microservices architecture. So we can do anything, but usually, like if we go with the concept of microservices, then this should not be done. And if multiple services directly depend on the same database table, then they may become the tightly coupled, and that is kind of defeats the concept of like the main benefit of the microservices. So the better approach is to let each service having its own data and to communicate through the APIs or events whenever it is needed. So yeah.
So in your project, can you tell me how do you resolve the conflicts in the Git?
Yeah, in Git, to resolve conflict, so first of all, whenever we say Git pull, so there are the chances that we lead to the conflict because someone else, some other developer would have added some lines of codes to the same file on which we are working on. So once we say Git pull, then we get the notification to resolve. We can see in the files like head, like arrow sign head, and like branch name. So we have to just remove that additional whatever has been lines has been added. We can remove that, and we can also remove the unwanted lines of the code, and we can keep the correct code, and we can resolve the files. And once it is resolved, then again we can just say git add like dot, and then git commit minus m. We can just give the commit message, and we can do the git push. So that is how usually we resolve it.
Okay, do you know what is Git rebase?
Yeah, git rebase is used to move or reapply the branch changes on top of another branch, so that we can commit the history, commit history becomes cleaner and like kind of linear. So yeah, so in simple words, like suppose we create our feature branch from main, and later the main itself got the new commits from the other developers. So if we want our branch to look like it was created from the latest updated main, then we can use the rebase. So Git will take our commits temporarily and temporarily remove them and put the latest main changes first, and then reapply our commits one by one on top. So ultimately, instead of creating an extra merge commit like git merge, then reverse will like rewrite the commit history and make it like kind of more cleaner. So yeah.